So here's the thing about Diane Nguyen and Guy No Last Name from Bojack Horseman. I've been seeing a lot of dissenting opinions on this character, honestly. While I felt that he was the best match for Diane and actually helped her grow as a person and overcome her need to fix the world around her, I do see a lot of people online who are not fans of Guy. Saw some people say that he enabled her behavior by being too lax, saw others say that he forced her to medicate herself. Lots of interesting arguments. But ultimately, I still do think that Guy was the right person for Diane, and despite their issues, which I'm actually glad that they had a few issues, it's way more real that way, they are generally beneficial for one another and play off of each other's personalities very well. Diane is a stressed out person, let's call it. She has lots of conspiracy theories, she's very cynical, and she always thinks about the worst of the world that she lives in. While Guy is very laid back and tends to give people the benefit of the doubt. In one of the first scenes we see them in, Diane thinks a mayor is targeting a neighborhood full of low-income housing by ruining their water supply, while Guy thinks it is genuinely a mistake with water filtration and that the guy is just an idiot.
The East Side is a lower-income area. Ergo, the residents are not huge campaign donors. Ergo...
No, the mayor didn't target that neighborhood. He was just that stupid when it came to water filtration.
He was just stupid enough to think he wouldn't get caught.
But the mayor's bad for different reasons. It isn't some high-intellect, evil machination to him, but just the cause and effect of idiocy and carelessness, which it very well might be. Regardless of your opinion on this issue, you can't deny that it is beneficial for people to be surrounded by opinions and thinking that is fundamentally different from their own. That way, Diane isn't constantly surrounded by that negativity that would feed back into her own personality and multiply, like when she spent time in Bojack's house after leaving Cordovia. She plainly stated that it was because they were too similar that they fell into those depressive states.
You know, I think we're alike in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's funny. I always tell people you're like the not cool version of me.
And sometimes that's great, but it also means we can bring out the worst in each other.
If you notice, this is also something that Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter did have, this difference between them, which I think is part of the reason why they lasted so long. They were quite different and did bring out new and better sides in one another at certain times, but it also caused a lot of friction between them, mostly because they fundamentally couldn't understand one another. But friction is pretty difficult to achieve with Guy. No, I'm not talking about a sex thing. And Diane and Guy healthily debate these things and just agree to disagree. They have fun talking about current events and discussing the differences in their own perceptions of the world around them. It isn't always a huge fight like it was with Mr. Peanut Butter. Guy can understand why she cares about these things in a way that Mr. Peanut Butter inherently couldn't. Mostly because Guy also cares about these issues and actively enjoys discussing them further. They at least have that in common. But he's also able to present a starkly different opinion than Diane, opening her mind up to the more lax attitude even if she doesn't fully adopt it, because, you know, changing your personality on like a 180-degree spin is not exactly the best idea either, and is not really possible. He definitely does rub off on her though in a big way, helping her to see the lighter side of things more often than before. And there's lots of examples of this too. When White Whale builds a giant skyscraper in his hometown, Diane is frustrated that they're expanding, but Guy is simply excited to add a new building to the skyline because it'll be prettier, or at least prettier than Dubai.
You cannot be excited about a giant corporation like White Whale setting up shop in your hometown.
I'm just excited we got a new big building. In your face, Dubai.
He has a different way of seeing things, a more positive, accepting way, and I think that really helps Diane. He's also more accepting of the concept of feel-good stories when Stefani pitches it, and suggests that they do one.
What about that girl who opened up a lemonade stand to pay for her dad's cancer treatment?
How is that a feel-good story? Hey, America, we're the only developed nation without subsidized healthcare, so this child joined the workforce in a desperate bid to keep her father alive.
He sees the better side of those situations. Although personally, I fully agree with Diane that this story is depressing as fuck. He declares that White Whale is not evil, they're just cruel and careless capitalists, while Diane says she can't tell the difference between capitalism and evil. And even with the coat argument in Feel Good Story, Guy does try to insist that it isn't a coded statement about her moving to Chicago.
Is this your way of asking me to move to Chicago?
No. Not everything is some kind of secret, underhanded conspiracy. Sometimes a coat's just a coat.
for when she gets cold. He has a much different way of looking at the world than she does overall. And I do think a part of the discomfort with Guy as a character comes from this fact that he is so laid back and accepting of some things that are terrible, like the Chicago baby humans.
Diane, he's not a literal human. Wah Wah is a tribute to your proud human heritage.
But he does have a limit, too. When White Whale buys Girl Crew, she is not trying to convince Diane to stay on. He hates White Whale too, and he would never work for them. In fact, he finds it completely outrageous how severely they try to limit their content, and is the one who comes up with the idea about making one last scoop about White Whale, even if it doesn't really pan out. I think it's more about having a more accepting mindset to the obstacles that are all around you, rather than raising hell every chance you get, only because that isn't healthy for you either. You can resolve to change things, and fight to change things, but at the end of the day, you can't fight everything. And if everywhere you turn in your life you pick a fight with something or someone, you're going to end up an extremely bitter, unhappy person. You need to allow yourself to accept the time that you live in and make the most out of it. Enjoy as much as you can. That's my advice. It doesn't mean you can't fight, it just means you shouldn't only fight.
Well, what are you gonna do, right?
Even if I do have 1,001 things that I want to fight about. It goes both ways, too. Diane is able to provide a different perspective for Guy as someone who cares more for control over the world around them, routines, and organization. When he complains about Lady not allowing him to see his son when Diane and him go to Chicago, Diane says that it's fair he's frustrated, but his ex does deserve a heads up that he's coming.
I'm only in Chicago for a week. I don't think it's selfish to want to see my son.
Yeah, but you gotta give your ex notice.
Ultimately, they help each other become better, fuller people through their differences. But it doesn't go so far, like with Mr. Peanut Butter, to create a rift between them. Another reason why I think Guy works so well for Diane is because he is understanding and patient. Even if his personality is starkly different than Diane's, he doesn't really try to stifle hers, which is something I've seen people say about him. When Diane is going hard into White Whale, he doesn't get scared off, as Diane assumes he's going to, likely because of the rift this behavior would cause between her and Mr. PB, but in fact, he states that Diane is glowing.
You're glowing.
He loves Diane for exactly who she is, and while he does help her work on her issues, he doesn't try to change her fundamentally, because he would never want to lose that woman that he fell in love with. And there's a limit to his patience, of course there is. Everyone has a limit, and Guy reaches it eventually and decides to comment on her ideological objection to feeling good. I won't lie, it's a bit aggressive to just hardcore diagnose someone like that in conversation, and it could definitely cause a lot of people to go on the defensive like Diane did here, but he did kind of read her for filth. Diane stared at that coat in the window of the shop for like a solid 20 seconds before deciding not to buy it. Girl, you're freezing. Just buy the jacket. And she admits herself that Guy was good for her and that she feels shitty all the time, except when he's with her, because he helps her keep an open mind and a more positive outlook than she would by herself. But she still chooses to go back to LA after deciding that Guy can't be the only good thing in her life. It is so great that she realizes that she can make a life for herself anywhere with the grilled cheese scenario.
The thing about making your own grilled cheese sandwiches, you can do it anywhere, you know?
Yes, she has friends and things to do in LA, but that doesn't mean she can't find things to do in Chicago, which she very quickly does. If Guy makes her happy, she should chase it, not push it away, like she normally does. She assumes that this relationship will not keep her happy forever, and that there will be a problem in the future, so she resolves to end it before it goes bad, to push Guy away before he eventually hates her, as everyone does in Diane's perception. Like Bojack says,
I wasted so many years being miserable because I assumed that was the only way to be.
And I love the mirror between Bojack's struggle and his letters, along with Diane and Guy. I think I was really smart for feel-good story. And still, after this, she avoids taking antidepressants despite the fact that her psychiatrist prescribed them, and she openly admits to hating herself. So, to the people who saw Guy as medicating Diane, I would ask what they think about that. I'm not criticizing you, but I mean, her doctor did say that she should be on medication for depression too, so what exactly is the issue there? Also, Guy doesn't give Diane a hard time for going through a hard time, even if he does push her to go on antidepressants. This is where we truly saw the depth of his patience. It can be extremely hard to live with someone with depression, even harder to help them out of their rut, or even get them to admit that there is a problem in the first place. So when Diane starts writing her book of essays and sinks further and further into a depressive state, Guy becomes concerned, but not pushy. He immediately notices that since starting the book, Diane's become different and has sunken lower than he's seen her before, whereas Diane sees this depressive state as who she truly is. It takes Bojack telling her that thinking the ugliness inside you is all that you are is stupid for her to realize the rut she's in and actually accept help.
Someone got really mad at me recently. I know, shocking. And he said, "Bojack, you ruin everything. That's what you are."
Oof.
And it actually took him saying it out loud for me to realize how stupid that is, even though I believed it for so long. I bought into this idea that I was the thing that couldn't be changed.
But Guy doesn't actually force her to do anything. He encourages her to go on the medication her doctor prescribed. He wants her to do what makes her happy. He hints at the fact that this book of essays is the root cause of this unhappiness, which is also actually true, but he never actually argues or yells at her to do anything she isn't willing to do herself. And while she does go on antidepressants and continue her memoir, she still does struggle with the process. But Guy is always supportive of her and tries to keep her on the right path. When Diane speculates that it's the meds that are ruining her writing process, which is so untrue because she was making way less progress off of the meds, Guy tries to guide her toward the positive emotions that she's been feeling due to the medication and how well she's been doing since she started it. Come on, it's like night and day when Diane is on this medication. She's more accepting of what's around her, she doesn't get bogged down by frustration, and she spends way less time obsessing over herself and her own mistakes. Plus, she just goes all in on fun ideas without second guessing herself a million times in the process. With these pills, she actually knows how to do things just because she enjoys them, and not because she has an agenda. I loved watching her come up with Ivy Tran Food Court Detective, and it is so clear, as PC says later in Good Damage, that she had fun while writing it, and that she lost herself in this joyful, colorful world that she created.
I don't want to write a middle grade fiction detective series.
I think you do, though. Because when I was reading it, I could tell you were having fun.
Yeah, but I'm not writing a book to have fun.
She enjoyed it. And even at her most productive, she never really felt that way about her book of essays. It only ever stressed her out and made her think about everything negative in her own life and her own personality. And I think Guy was really aware of this, but very careful and supportive about how he addressed it. He never tried to force her to stop writing the essays or lost his patience due to her frustration with it, but subtly encouraged her when she presented Ivy Tran to him. He can see that Diane's need to write this treatise on damage is damaging her and her newfound happiness because she obviously doesn't even want to do it. She feels obligated to because of the damage to make some use out of it. The only time he really stepped over this line was when he sent the Ivy Tran pages to Princess Carolyn without asking Diane, but I think he makes a good point about the state that Diane was in and how there was a looming deadline with Princess Carolyn that needed to be pushed back. Besides, this time did really help Diane take a beat and assess what she's been doing to herself, plus get back on her medication. He did it for Diane's mental health. When she slides back too, Guy is there for her, and he doesn't fault her in any way for going off of her pills in the attempt to make her book better. He accepts her for how she is, and is able to talk her off the ledge when she's reaching a seriously low point. He simply calmly tells her that they'll discuss further after she's evened out and has a clear head, and even follows back up on the conversation when she is feeling better. Ultimately, this is just the best way to handle this sort of situation. Support, comfort, calm down, and then when they're feeling better and more lucid, then you can talk about the heavier stuff. But even after this huge situation with the antidepressants and Diane's memoir, Guy is still supportive and patient. When we see them dealing with a very average level issue, not some blowout fight, when Bojack's interview is airing, Guy encourages her to just talk more about her past. Even if she's in a good place now, as she says, that doesn't mean you can avoid everything that happened before. You need to address it and deal with it, especially during a time when that person is in the public eye in such a major way. Overall, you can just see him encourage her to make the healthy choice at every turn, and actively praises her for taking care of herself. Plus, I can't count the amount of times that Guy gives Diane his coat before buying her a new one. Takes him a really long time to make that gesture to her, and while I'm not a huge fan of the tone he brought it up in, there is something to be said about him being willing to endure the cold for Diane so many times, while she stubbornly avoids buying a jacket because she doesn't like feeling good about herself. And it's also said by Sunny that this isn't the first time Guy has been in a relationship with someone who has mental health issues. Now, he phrases it a different way.
My dad has a thing for broken women. Then he nurses them back to health, and when they're better, they leave.
Which would definitely be problematic, if true. But I think this is more Sonny's perception of his father's dating life, as Guy dates full, complicated women with their own lives and issues, instead of an ideal, because he has that kind of patience and can effectively deal with it. But usually, as Sonny also tells us, the result is that they leave him in the end. I don't think Guy nurses people back to health and then just pushes them out the door. He just happens to fall for very layered, textured women who need some help, and he's willing to offer it if they're willing to accept it. Another reason why I love Guy is that he is self-aware. Guy admits when he's made mistakes. It's not as if this relationship is perfect. I mean, no relationship is, so thank God. But he is awkward at introducing Diane to his friends at first and has trouble opening her up to his family and the issues that come with that. But mostly because he's not sure Diane actually wants to meet them, and he doesn't want to force anything onto her too quickly. Guy is a careful, Guy. He doesn't want to pressure Diane into filling some role in his life, and doesn't want to force her to have a relationship with his son. But when Diane requests to meet him, he's eager to have them get to know each other, and he actively makes an effort to include Diane when Sonny is around. And it leads to Diane and Sonny having a very positive relationship. Honestly, not a very sad scene, but I cried real tears seeing Sonny be so enthusiastic about Ivy Tran, and showing Diane that people she didn't even intend to connect with can connect to her book.
And you know how Ivy kept her dad's watch in her locker because even though he wasn't around, she still knew that he loved her? Was that real too?
Well,
Parts of it felt real, you know?
yeah, I know.
It's cool that you wrote a book. I mean, I think girls are gonna like it. Especially girls who, don't have good self-esteem.
I hope so.
He even inspires her to begin writing the sequel, seeing how big an effect it has in young people's lives. And yes, he does make an executive decision sending Ivy Tran to Princess Carolyn without consulting with Diane. This is wrong, even if it worked out well. But Guy is aware of this, and he apologizes to Diane immediately afterward. He explains that he was honestly panicking due to Diane's recent behavior and wanted to find a quick way to buy her time to recuperate, which she did really need. I mean, it's not an incorrect assessment. And in the end, she loves Ivy Tran and never would have pursued it if not for him. But even so, Guy knows that it isn't okay for him to make decisions for Diane, and is willing to discuss his mistake immediately afterward. In fact, he comes to her and tells her before Princess Carolyn comes to Diane, not trying to hide it at all. I mean, he knows he'll be found out, but still, it's important that he's honest with her as soon as he knows that she's level-headed and in a good place. Overall, Guy was just the perfect guy for Diane. He knew how to calm her down and talk her down from the ledges she would so often put herself on. How to encourage her to pursue her own happiness without forcing it onto her and scaring her away. And how to have a meaningful discussion without it turning into an argument. He was exactly what Diane needed in a partner, and I was honestly stunned by how well they created this relationship and made me fall in love with it so quickly. He's only in season 6, guys, not even in an episode before then, and I am still obsessed with these two. I truly don't think Diane could have gotten a better ending than with this man. But let me know if you think the same thing. If you still dislike Guy after this video, let me know why that is. I'm really curious to know why people don't like him, because I am a big fan of Diane and Guy for the reasons I've stated in this video. But if you want to support this further, you can go to patreon.com/PosiTVty. That's POSITVTY. There you get all these videos weeks before they get up on YouTube. You get the unedited video essays, and you can choose exactly what we want to make. If you ask us to make something as a patron, we will make it immediately. Plus, you can join for free if you just want some sneak previews of the videos before they go out on YouTube. But anyway, thank you guys so much for supporting us and watching this video in the first place. We genuinely really appreciate it, and we hope you will join us for the next one, if you don't hate me by now. I don't know why I said that. I'm becoming Diane a little bit. I'm just assuming that people will want to fight me for this video. No, this is my opinion, and I am proud of it.